Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated to a medieval Pokémon world. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 171, Target. In the courtyard behind the castle, even in late autumn, the flowers and plants remained lush and vibrant. Clusters of blossoms decorated the ground, and the trees were full of life. A swing hung from the branches of a large tree. It was the same swing that Dragonite had broken in the courtyard, repaired by the carpenter and moved here. This entire space existed because of Dragonite's dragon aura. Just like the Dragon Sanctuary in Johto, a place where concentrated dragon-type energy enriches the environment so much that flowers bloom year-round and nature thrives regardless of season. At this moment, Oshawott was staring at the lake with bright, sparkling eyes. Osha! It leapt forward and plunged into the water, sending up a huge splash. A moment later, Oshawott surfaced again, looking excitedly at the Pokémon on the shore. Adino, Breloom, Lilligant, Gothita, and the others appeared just as delighted. These Pokémon seemed to really like this place, Elif thought as he watched them. However, he immediately hesitated. This garden had been created specifically by His Highness Lucian for his own Pokémon. Would it be inappropriate to let these newcomers live here? After thinking it over, Elif allowed the Pokémon to rest there for now, then hurried to the top floor to report the situation to Lucian. Those magical beasts really like my ecological garden? Lucian asked, a little surprised. Elif nodded. Yes, Your Highness. Then let them stay there, Lucian said. He had not yet had the time to gather the Pokémon he personally wanted to raise. Rather than leave the garden empty, it was better to let these displaced Pokémon live there. Yes, Your Highness. I will arrange everything for them right away, Elif said. Pokémon need homes too, so Lucian instructed the carpenter to build several small wooden cabins in the garden so the Pokémon could sleep comfortably in their own shelters at night. Lucian nodded slightly, then looked at the three exhausted Swords of Justice who had fallen asleep. After a moment of thought, he said, the war has begun. We need to be prepared. Later, have Geralt and Christina meet me in the throne room. Yes, Your Highness, Elif replied before withdrawing quietly. Lucian sat alone at his desk, contemplating the current situation facing his territory. As the old king had once said, war is never something a single person can control. If Lucian intervened recklessly, even if he managed to defeat both the first prince and the second prince, he would not be able to take command of all the surrounding territories immediately. The entire Unova region would likely fall into even deeper chaos. The northern and southern armies had only just begun their conflict. They could not act prematurely. Moreover, winter was approaching. Soon the land would be buried under snowdrifts and blizzards, forming a natural barrier that would temporarily isolate Lucian City from the outside world, making it easier to defend and harder to attack. The first prince and second prince were still locked in their own struggle. Lucian had time to continue strengthening his foundation. The most important thing right now is preparing for winter, storing enough food, and preparing to accept refugees who may arrive at any moment. Next, we must focus on taking in refugees and rescuing magical beasts driven from their homes by the war. At the same time, the school must continue running normally, and the knight's training must not stop. Once all the Lyron evolve into Agron, and the Altaria master Draco Meteor, that will be the time for us to enter the war. Lucian made this decision silently. That afternoon, the three Swords of Justice, led by Cobalion, arrived in the throne room along with Geralt, Christina, Ryan, and several others. Lucian sat on his throne and let his gaze sweep over everyone before speaking slowly. I believe all of you have heard the news. The war has begun. Geralt's expression instantly grew serious. The moment they all feared had finally arrived. Ryan felt his heartbeat quicken in anxiety. Christina frowned, worry evident in her eyes. The Swords of Justice turned their full attention to Lucian, waiting for his next command.
Gerald, Lucian said, we must begin preparations immediately.
The Knight's special training must continue. In addition, we need to expand our forces further, recruiting more soldiers from the city and accepting suitable refugees.
Pokémon would be their greatest advantage.
If they built a strong enough Pokémon army, even one Pokémon could turn the tide against 1,000 foes. With the proper training and strategy, they could close the massive gap in numbers between themselves and the first and second princes.
Yes, Your Highness, Gerald answered firmly.
Christina, Lucian continued, the war will destroy many innocent towns and villages. From today onward, Lucian City will do everything it can to shelter refugees, as well as homeless Pokémon and soldiers who do not wish to fight. I need you to publish this in the newspaper and have Zack and the others deliver copies to the surrounding territories. I'll start immediately, Christina replied without hesitation.
Lucian nodded, then turned his gaze toward the three Swords of Justice. Terrakion, Cobalion, Virizion, don't worry. The war won't reach Lucian City for now.
From now on, I'll continue relying on you to rescue the Pokémon who have lost their homes.
We will give them food and shelter.
This is our duty, Cobalion replied with a calm nod.
Lucian's eyes swept across the room.
His voice grew heavy.
Our enemies are not only humans. They are also Pokémon. The first prince had used violence to force Pokémon into battle. Those unwilling Pokémon were dragged to the battlefield as tools.
That extreme ideology of domination, rejecting a Pokémon's will and treating them as expendable, had actually been acknowledged by Zekrom, who was a Pokémon himself. Against that kind of army, Lucian could use a defection strategy. He could turn the conscripted Pokémon, those who were fighting unwillingly, back to his side, weakening the first prince's strength in one move. But against the second prince, Lance, this approach would not work.
Lucian understood far too well.
Lance's core belief was to liberate Pokémon from human control. The Pokémon fighting for Lance did so of their own free will. They shared his ideology. They chose this war. No psychological tactic could make them defect.
In any case, all of you must be prepared, Lucian said.
Yes, Your Highness, everyone answered firmly. A total of 11 Pokémon had arrived with the Swords of Justice: Adino, Oshawott, Gothita, Pachirisu, Amoonguss, Petilil, Sewaddle, Budew, Emolga, and Vulpix. That afternoon, Lucian walked to the ecological garden behind the castle and quietly watched the newcomers. Oshawott splashed happily in the lake. Pachirisu sprawled out in a sunny patch of grass.
Adino gently patted Gothita's back.
Emolga spun around a tree trunk, gliding in circles.
Vulpix dozed peacefully among the flowers. Each one was lively and adorable. Just watching them eased the weight in Lucian's chest. Footsteps approached from behind.
Lucian turned to see the three Swords of Justice walking toward him.
Cobalion came to stand at his side. Together, they looked out at the Pokémon below.
Their home was destroyed by the war, Cobalion said quietly.
It used to be a dense forest. But when the armies arrived, they trampled everything.
Flames swept through the trees, and countless Pokémon were caught in it.
We tried to stop it.
But before 200,000 soldiers, and before Zekrom and Reshiram, we were too small.
Lucian clenched his fists silently. He knew the original history of this war. There would be no winner.
The princes would destroy each other. The dragons would burn their own life force.
Reshiram and Zekrom would collapse, their bodies turning to stone.
The land would fracture. The kingdom would break apart. If not for the old king and Victini, everything would have been lost. Lucian closed his eyes, inhaling deeply.
Countless civilians and Pokémon would suffer during this war. Lucian knew it all too clearly.
The old king had taught him many things: how to govern a territory, how to protect the people, how to read the tides of war.
And most importantly,
war was never something a single person could stop.
You must lie low, the old king once said. Wait for the kingdom to bleed. Wait until war exhausts the people.
When despair reaches its peak, that is when you step forward to end it.
When that moment comes, the kingdom will choose you.
It was the logical path.
The safe path. The one designed for guaranteed success.
But standing here now, looking at Virizion, Cobalion, and Terrakion, loyal, exhausted, and still pushing themselves to protect innocent Pokémon, Lucian felt something twist in his heart. He could not watch this continue.
Not when civilians were fleeing their homes. Not when forests burned. Not when Pokémon cried out in fear.
And not when he had Kyurem, the only being capable of ending the three dragons' cycle of destruction. The old king's route would work. But Lucian was no longer someone who merely followed another's plan.
He was someone forging a new future.
Even if his current army was far weaker than his brothers, he and Kyurem alone could stand against 10,000. The thought made his eyes sharpen with determination. Lucian straightened, looking at the three swords of justice.
Believe me, Cobalion. Virizion. Terrakion. I will stop this war. Virizion gave a gentle, warm smile.
We will stand with you, Lucian.
Lucian nodded deeply. I know. Cobalion stepped forward, expression grave. We must go. The war continues elsewhere.
More Pokémon have lost their homes, they will be waiting for us.
Virizion added softly, we will guide them. And bring them here. Terrakion gave a hearty grin. These kids are in your care now, Lucian. Lucian placed a hand over his chest. Go. When the time comes, we will meet again, and by then, everything will be different. The three swords of justice nodded firmly.
They believed in Kyurem's choice, and therefore, they believed in Lucian.
After a short rest, they departed once more. Lucian's city, ecological garden.
When Lucian returned to the garden, the rescued Pokémon immediately looked up at him.
Oshawott.
Vulpix.
Emolga. Gothita.
Their gazes were full of worry and lingering fear, but also hope.
Cobalion and the others have left, Lucian said gently, kneeling down.
But don't worry, I'll take care of you now.
Oshawott's ears drooped slightly at that. Its big eyes glimmered with sadness. But even it knew, the swords of justice had more Pokémon to save. Lucian extended his hand, smiling warmly. Adino, Oshawott, Vulpix, Emolga, Sawaddle, welcome to Lucian City.
A city where humans and Pokémon live together, without war, without fear.
Oshawott's eyes lit up. Osha, it squeaked, nodding rapidly. It remembered Terrakion's words from the journey. Lucian City is the best place in the world.
A place where all Pokémon can live happily. Looking at the little water type bouncing with excitement, Lucian couldn't help but laugh softly.
Oshawott, the sea otter Pokémon. A water-type starter of Unova.
Oshawott, Tepig, Snivy, with these three, Lucian now held all the Unova starters. If they could eventually be bred and raised in a peaceful environment, Lucian could one day provide professionally trained starters to the trainer association he planned to establish. Children over 10 years old who wished to become trainers would receive these little ones, just like in the Unova League of the world he once knew. But Oshawott was only one of many new lives now depending on him. Lucian shifted his gaze to the others in the garden. Adino, the hearing Pokémon, gentle, empathetic, and with extraordinary auditory senses. A single touch of its feeler-like antennae could sense physical conditions, emotions, even detect when a Pokémon egg was about to hatch. In the modern era, this Pokémon was always seen assisting Nurse Joy. Here, Adino could help him build Lucian City's medical system for both humans and Pokémon. Joltik, whose silk was famously strong. Some people even wove scarves with it. Lucian imagined. Maybe specialized protective clothing or tools. Then Gothita, the little psychic type with unfathomably deep eyes. When it fully evolved into Gothitelle, it would become the perfect butler Pokémon, comparable to NDD. Maybe one day, Lucian thought, Gothita can be trained to help manage the castle. Then there were Lediba, Breloom, Sunkern, Skitty, Budew, Emolga, and Vulpix. A small, fluffy, absolutely adorable Vulpix was curled among the grass, staring up at him with big ruby eyes. Vulpix! Lucian crouched down, unable to resist reaching out to stroke its warm, silky fur.
From now on, you'll stay here and live well, alright?
View! The little fox tilted its head, then happily licked the palm of his hand with its tiny pink tongue.
Lucian couldn't help but scoop it into his arms.
Its fur was soft and warm, like holding a ball of living, gentle flame.
The feel was heavenly. Chapter 172, Lucian's Plan. Ooh. Vulpix, small and warm, was held in Lucian's arms and gently stroked.
Its eyes immediately squinted in comfort, a soft gurgling sound escaping from its throat.
This was the first time it had ever been treated this way by a human. It felt wonderful.
On the journey here, Cobalion and the others had spoken of Lucian many times. They said he was different from other humans, someone who did not harm Pokémon, someone who genuinely cared for them.
At first, Vulpix had been doubtful. But now, wrapped in warmth and kindness, it believed every word.
Seeing this, the nearby Oshawott, Budu, and the others gathered around as well, circling Lucian, tugging at his clothes, bumping into him playfully.
The ecological park filled with soft cries and laughter. Lucian looked at the innocent Pokémon surrounding him and took a slow, steady breath. His decision was made. He gently patted Vulpix's fluffy head and then stood up. Vulpix blinked. View?
I still have something important to do, Lucian said softly.
You all rest here. Elif will take good care of you. View. Vulpix nodded, tail flicking lightly, signaling it would wait for him. Lucian smiled faintly and turned away. He recalled Kyurem into its Pokeball, then summoned Elif. Elif, Lucian said, I need to see my father. I'll leave the territory in your hands for now. Your Highness?
Elif was startled. There are things I must say to him, Lucian replied calmly.
Elif paused, then bowed deeply. Yes, Your Highness. Please go without worry. Lucian nodded. Moments later, Dragonite took to the sky, wings beating powerfully as they flew toward Eindhoek. Earthsword Castle. This time, Lucian did not sneak in. He descended openly from the sky. The moment Dragonite landed, the royal guards tensed, weapons raised. Who goes there? This is the royal city, no unauthorized entry. Lucian stepped forward.
Recognition flashed across their faces.
Prince Lucian? But Prince Landon has ordered a full lockdown. No one is allowed to enter.
I know, Lucian said calmly.
You are only following orders. I don't wish to harm you. Please, step aside. The guards hesitated, but duty prevailed. We cannot obey, Your Highness. Steel rang as swords were drawn. Lucian sighed softly. Behind him, Dragonite roared. A crushing dragon aura erupted outward. With a single sweep of its tail, the guards were sent tumbling back, weapons clattering across the stone. Lucian did not look back. He ascended the steps and entered the inner palace.
The king's bedchamber.
Lucian?
The old king stared at him in disbelief.
I heard a disturbance outside, was that you just now?
He had heard some noise down below, as if someone had broken in. The old king hadn't expected it to be Lucian.
Lucian nodded slowly.
Father, the war has already begun. The old king paused, then let out a bitter smile.
I know, he said softly. How could he not know?
2 armies of princes, 2 dragons tearing at the sky, this was a calamity no king could ignore.
For a moment, the room fell silent.
Then the old king lifted his gaze to Lucian.
It seems, you've already made your choice.
Lucian lowered his head slightly.
I'm sorry, father. I cannot follow the path you prepared for me.
The old king stiffened.
What are you planning to do?
Lucian's voice was low, steady, and filled with conviction. When war begins, the ones who truly suffer are never kings or nobles.
It's the civilians. The magical beasts. Ordinary people who only wish to live. In just 3 days since my eldest and second brothers clashed, countless humans and magical beasts have already lost their homes. Their lives. If this continues, even if one side wins, the kingdom itself will be ruined. The old king clenched his fingers. Lucian continued. I could wait. I could stand aside, watch the war escalate, and only intervene once resentment fills the land, acting as a savior. But I can't. His eyes were clear. If I have the power to stop it now, yet choose to do nothing, I would never forgive myself. The old king whispered, almost involuntarily. Lucian. I want to walk my own path, Lucian said calmly. If nobles resist me, I will give them one chance. His gaze hardened. The second time, I will show no mercy. As for the civilians and the magical beasts, Lucian's voice softened slightly. They know who protects them. They will choose. The old king was silent for a long time. Then he spoke again, worry unmistakable in his voice. Zikram and Reshiram are not ordinary dragons. You would be facing nearly 400,000 soldiers, both your brothers combined. That army could erase everything you've built. Lucian met his gaze. I alone can withstand 1,000 armies. The old king searched his son's face. Are you prepared? Lucian nodded. At last, the old king exhaled deeply. Very well. If this is your resolve, then go. I will help you however I can. Then, after a pause, he added quietly. But promise me one thing. If you win, spare your elder brothers. Lucian did not hesitate. I promise, father. Then he extended a hand. Come with me to Lucian's city. Victini will be relieved to see you safe. The old king chuckled softly. Very well. I should see this city of yours, this place where humans and magical beasts live together. This time, he did not refuse. Suddenly, hurried footsteps echoed outside. The door burst open. Royal guards poured into the chamber, weapons raised. Prince Lucian, one of them shouted. Release His Majesty at once. Lucian looked at them calmly. It will be over soon. Dragonite exhaled a surge of purple dragon breath. The crushing pressure forced the guards backward, stumbling, unable to advance. Lucian mounted Dragonite, helped the old king aboard, and rose into the sky and flew towards Lucian's city. Soon, they touched down at the foot of the castle. The guards spotted Lucian and hurried over at once. Your Highness Lucian. Then they noticed the elderly man walking beside him. That was His Majesty? Shock rippled through the line. For a moment, no one seemed to breathe. Lucian gave them a brief nod and led the old king inside. The king slowly looked around, taking in the towering walls and the bustling life beyond them. This town, this castle. Did you really build it all, piece by piece? Of course. Lucian's tone was calm, almost matter-of-fact. That's what magical beasts make possible. With their help, we save an enormous amount of labor, whether it's farming, construction, or everyday life. He paused, then added quietly, unlike my older brothers, this is the path I've chosen. I want humans and magical beasts to live together, not as masters and slaves, but as partners, using each other's strengths to build a better life on this land. Incredible. The old king couldn't help the awe in his voice. Just then, a familiar chirp sounded from ahead. Victini had been in town, watching people bake cookies. The smell had made it hungry, and when it went looking for Lucian to beg for a treat, it couldn't find him anywhere. Hearing Lucian's voice outside, Victini came zipping over. But the moment it saw the figure beside Lucian, it froze midair. Nini. The old king's expression softened into a gentle smile. Victini. It's been a long time. Nini. Victini's eyes lit up. It darted forward, circling the king in quick, excited loops,
as if it couldn't decide whether to hug him or just keep flying. From today on, Father will be living here in Lucian City, with us, Lucian said, smiling. So you don't have to worry anymore, Victini.
Nini. Victini looked a little embarrassed, as though it had been caught. Lucian really had found out.
When Victini heard war had broken out, when the first and second princes turned their blades on each other, it was terrified.
No one understood better than Victini what chaos could do to a kingdom. Nini. Lucian was the best.
Father, I'll have a room prepared for you, Lucian said.
Until then, let me show you around Lucian City.
But the old king waved him off, then looked to Victini instead.
Don't fuss over me. Go handle your own affairs.
His gaze softened again.
Let Victini be my guide.
I'll wander at my own pace.
Nini.
Victini puffed up with pride immediately, as if accepting an official mission.
Lucian didn't argue. He simply nodded. All right.
Lucian City was safe enough that he didn't need to worry about his father's security. After so long in confinement, the old king stepped out of the castle with Victini at his side. He stopped beneath the sunlight, tilted his head back, and stared into the endless sky. For a heartbeat, it felt like he'd stepped into another world.
Nini?
Victini hovered close, turning back to look at him. It's nothing, the old king said with a smile.
Come on, Victini. Nini.
He changed out of his royal robes and walked the streets like an ordinary old man. As he wandered, he found himself staring at things he'd never seen in his own capital: newspapers being sold on corners, shops stocked with goods made with Pokémon assistants, a trainer association building with people coming and going, children enthusiastically directing friendly Pokémon battles, and Pokémon living alongside humans everywhere he looked. Under Lucian's rule, the city ran with startling order. More than that, the bond between people and Pokémon felt genuine.
Natural. As if it had always been meant to be this way.
The old king's chest tightened with emotion as he took it all in.
Lucian, he's really grown up.
Inside the castle, Elif was stunned by what Lucian had said.
What? Your Highness, you brought His Majesty here? Lucian blinked, surprised by the reaction. What's wrong?
The capital is crawling with Prince Landon's men and Prince Lance's men, Elif said, panic creeping into his voice. The moment they realize you took His Majesty out from under their noses, the news will reach both princes.
We'll be exposed.
Those two each commanded an army of 200,000. Lucian City, on the other hand, had fewer than 2,000 soldiers. With a gap like that, even without relying on their Pokémon core, Landon and Lance could still flatten the city Lucian had built with his own hands, simply by marching a human army straight through it.
But Lucian remained completely calm.
You're underestimating Kyurem, Lucian said, steady and reassuring. Elif, Lucian City wasn't built overnight, and I didn't build it just to watch someone burn it down.
No one is destroying this place. I know exactly what I'm doing. Elif exhaled, his shoulders loosening. Lucian wasn't the type to boast. If His Highness said he had a plan, then he had a plan. Southern Unova.
Within a massive castle, a handsome man with sharp, deep-set features and thick, sword-straight brows lounged on the throne. Even sitting still, he radiated arrogance and authority as he listened to his subordinates report.
Your Highness. Something terrible has happened.
Prince Lucian stormed the capital with a powerful magical beast, injured the guards, and took His Majesty right in front of us.
Lucian. Landon narrowed his eyes. So he's finally showing himself.
So his third brother intended to interfere in the struggle between him and Lance. If Lucian chose to side with Lance, it would be troublesome.
But if Lucian didn't oppose him? Landon's lips curled slightly, almost approving.
Still, there was one question that mattered.
Have you located Lucian? Landon asked coolly. Yes, Your Highness. The scout bowed. The third prince is currently in a town called Lucian City. Our investigation shows the total population is under 10,000. It's a tiny place. Under 10,000.
Landon fell silent, tapping a finger against the armrest as he considered it.
Your Highness, Lucian is a variable, one minister said cautiously. If he allies with the enemy, it could become a serious threat. Don't overstate it, another minister scoffed. Lucian probably has fewer than 1,000 troops. With your Highness's 200,000 soldiers, you could crush that town without breaking stride. The real problem is Prince Lance. Rumor says many more magical beasts have joined his forces these past few days. The ministers bickered back and forth. Your Highness, please decide. Landon thought for a moment, then spoke. Given my third brother's current strength, he isn't a threat. He lifted his gaze, voice hardening. The priority remains my dear second brother. Also, issue orders to the imperial generals. Prepare for war on multiple fronts. Nimbasa territory, Driftvale territory, all of them should belong to us. Yes, Your Highness. Chapter 173, Freezing Everything, Kurum's True Power. The war in the Unova region had fully erupted. The two princes of the Kingdom of Eindhoek officially clashed across the plains outside Castelia City, drawing in countless humans and Pokémon alike. The kingdom's southern coast was dominated by wide, open plains, prime land with excellent positioning and abundant resources. With that advantage, the eldest prince, Landon, had gathered a fearsome power base and a deep bench of capable commanders. Against his younger brother's forces, Landon chose to fight on multiple fronts. The flames of war spread with terrifying speed. Wherever the iron hooves of his 200,000-strong army marched, villages vanished, forests were trampled into ruin, and entire settlements disappeared from the map as though they had never existed. Facing Landon's army, the second prince, Lance, was at a disadvantage in human numbers, yet he had something Landon didn't. Pokémon.
Countless Pokémon rallied to his banner, forming a powerful Pokémon legion to resist the invasion and bring an end to the conflict. Watching them, Lance felt more convinced than ever that the road he had chosen was the right one. Compared to these straightforward, kind-hearted Pokémon, the humans who enslaved them were nothing but hypocrites. A detachment under Lance's command had been stationed at Nimbasa, roughly 20,000 soldiers, ordered to defend Nimbasa City. Scouts had confirmed it, the first prince's army was on its way, and this garrison was expected to hold the line. My lord, a subordinate reported anxiously, scouts estimate the enemy force at over 50,000. More than twice our numbers. I'm afraid we won't be able to hold the city. On the wall, a tall, imposing middle-aged commander stared toward the desolate horizon, his expression grim. Have the reinforcements arrived yet? He asked. Before the subordinate could answer, a voice came from behind. My lord, the reinforcements are here. And there's a letter from Prince Lance. Surprise flickered across the faces around him. The commander opened the letter. As his eyes moved over the contents, his body went stiff. Prince Lance had dispatched a Pokémon corps of roughly 20,000. The letter's orders were explicit, no one was to harm them. Anyone who disobeyed would be executed immediately. That alone wasn't the issue. What truly enraged him was the rest. Those Pokémon were being given better food and better treatment than his own human soldiers. His Highness, what exactly was he thinking? Before he could dwell on it further, another report came in, urgent. The enemy has reached the gates. Without hesitation, the commander led his troops out to meet them. The Pokémon Corps advanced as well, joining the clash. But under the enemy's relentless assault, their lines began to falter. Retreat turned messy, then dangerous. Fall back, the commander shouted. Defend the city. The enemy did not pursue. Instead, they shifted tactics and laid siege. A stalemate set in. At first, everyone thought they could endure it. Then the supply routes were cut. Food dwindled. Day by day, the human soldiers' rations shrank, until they were nearly gone. And yet, the Pokémon Corps still had plenty. Starving troops eventually forced their way into the granaries, only to freeze in disbelief. The Pokémon stored food wasn't just greater in quantity, it was better in quality, with far more variety than anything the humans were given.
Resentment spread like poison through the ranks.
Grumbling turned into open anger, and discipline began to fray.
Military camp.
Armored Pokémon sat on the ground in heavy silence, faces blank with exhaustion and numb despair. Behind them stood rows of humans gripping long whips.
A few Pokémon tried to resist.
They were met with blades, and the sting of vine-like whips that snapped hard enough to draw blood.
Hey! Behave, one handler sneered. If you don't want to die, you'll fight properly in the next battle. Another laughed darkly. You don't want to see your parents and children get hurt, do you? Fury flashed across some Pokémon faces. Jaws opened.
Claws rose. Then they saw the cages not far away. Inside, their loved ones cried and clung to the bars, small bodies trembling, eyes wide with fear.
The raised claws fell.
Mournful cries echoed through the camp, raw and helpless.
Oof.
That's more like it, the handler said, satisfied.
Now get your heads up. If we win the next battle, maybe I'll let you see your kid again. Your Highness, aren't we being a little too cruel?
From a ridge overlooking the military camp, a minister couldn't hold back the question as he watched the scene below.
The eldest prince, Landon, didn't even blink.
People who accomplish great things don't waste time worrying over trifles, he said coldly. And don't forget, every year, countless citizens of this kingdom lose their lives because of magical beasts.
He turned slightly, voice hard as iron. Humans and magical beasts are fundamentally different. We were never meant to coexist. If we don't conquer them, then one day we'll be the ones torn apart in their jaws. To Landon, the purpose of Pokémon on the battlefield was simple. Vanguard. Meat shield. They existed to bleed first, to grind down the enemy's strength as much as possible. That was their meaning. Their value.
The war continued to spread, devouring everything in its path.
Villages burned.
Forests were reduced to ash and stumps. Families who had lived on the same land for generations stood among the wreckage, staring at what was left of their homes. A little girl, her face smeared with dust and her eyes swollen red, clutched her mother's hand.
Mom, our house is gone. What do we do now?
The woman's throat tightened. The war had swallowed the entire kingdom. Their home was gone.
Their money was gone.
Their stored grain, their winter hope, had been looted. She stared ahead, expression hollow, unable to see a path forward. The world was so vast, but where did they belong in it? Mother and daughter joined the river of refugees and began to walk. They drifted for what felt like forever, passing through village after village, city after city, only to find people just like them, exhausted, hungry, and carrying everything they still owned on their backs. Then one day, a rumor raced through the crowd like wildfire.
Prince Lucian of Lucian City says he'll take in refugees.
He'll give us shelter.
Lucian City. What kind of place was that?
Hope flickered in the woman's eyes, small, fragile, but real.
If it was true, then maybe they weren't finished. The refugees turned as one and began heading toward Lucian City.
Along the way, more displaced people joined them. Even Pokémon, lost, abandoned, or fleeing the fighting, fell into step beside the wandering crowd. In the face of war, human and Pokémon alike were hard to tell apart.
Everyone was a victim.
After an unknown stretch of time, a magnificent castle finally rose from the plains ahead. And beneath it stood a bustling town, bright, alive, and impossibly orderly. That was the legendary Lucian City. The refugees surged forward, excitement breaking through their exhaustion. But as they reached the outskirts, they slowed, then stopped, hesitation creeping in.
They tried to enter towns before.
Most had turned them away without a second thought, driving them off like pests. As the crowd wavered uncertainly, locals noticed their arrival. After confirming who they were, someone hurried over.
"Come with us," the man said, voice firm but kind.
"There's a place prepared for resettlement." They were led to a designated area where food was distributed and clean water was handed out, real water, not muddy dregs. "Don't worry," Lena said softly as she looked over the exhausted group.
You're safe now. Everything will be alright.
Lucian City was short-staffed, and she'd been assigned to help receive the refugees, people who'd lost everything, and had nowhere else to go. There aren't enough houses for everyone in the territory right now, Lena said, but don't worry, we'll build more as quickly as we can. This is where we used to stay ourselves. Please rest here for the time being. With food, water, and a roof over their heads, the refugees were already grateful beyond words. They thanked her again and again. But Lena only shook her head with a gentle smile. There's no need to thank me. This was all arranged by His Highness Lucian. He knew you would come, so he had us prepare food and clean water in advance. His Highness Lucian. Please, then convey our gratitude to His Highness, the crowd said, moved by a prince they had never even met. Lena nodded. I will. But His Highness isn't in the territory right now. It may take some time before he returns. Not here? The refugees froze. Where did our Lord go? Someone asked, unable to hide the anxiety in their voice. His Highness is taking care of something very important, Lena explained softly. When he's finished, he'll return, and you'll all be able to meet him. Will His Highness be in danger? A little girl in the crowd asked, her voice small. There was war everywhere. The outside world was terrifying. Lena crouched, patted the girl's head, and gently wiped the dust from her cheek. His Highness is very capable. He'll be fine, she said. If you're worried, then pray for him before you sleep tonight. I will, the girl nodded hard. After the refugees were settled, Lena returned to the hospital. Still no news of His Highness? She asked, looking at her sister. Selena shook her head. It had been 7 days since His Highness left the territory. 7 days ago, Lucian had entrusted all internal affairs to His Majesty, then departed on his dragon Pokémon, vanishing without a single message since. The silence left both Lena and Selena uneasy. If something happened to His Highness, neither of them dared to imagine the consequences. Don't worry, Selena said, as if she were reassuring her sister and herself. His Highness will definitely return safely. Inside the castle, the old king stared at the letter in his hand, shock written plainly across his face. In just 7 days. Undella Town, Lacunosa Village, Isiris City, Oplucid City, and Village Bridge had already submitted. Whether their local lords had truly surrendered out of loyalty or simple fear didn't matter, at least in name, the entire eastern side of the kingdom had fallen under their control. Lucian. How had he done it? Your Majesty, Elif said, eyes bright with disbelief, His Highness is extraordinary, especially for his age. Elif had been worried at first. Now it seemed those worries had been pointless. I wonder where that child is now. The old king murmured. Meanwhile, in Twin Dragon City. Outside the castle, the enemy army had already reached the gates. From the walls of the city, Lord Sharon stared down at the dark mass of troops spreading across the plains. His expression was grim. My lord, Butler Kron said tensely, their commander is the kingdom's #1 warrior, General Worth. General Worth's reputation was infamous. He was said to have defeated several powerful Pokémon on his own, carving his name into the kingdom's history with raw strength and bloodshed. Oof. Sharon's eyes narrowed. Prince Landon thinks highly of me, sending him to take Twin Dragon City. He let out a cold laugh, then turned slightly. Fortunately, Prince Lance made preparations in advance. Kron, open the gates. Yes, my lord. Kron raised a hand. Below, the soldiers heaved the mechanisms into motion, and the city gates began to creak open. The next instant, armored Pokémon surged out like a steel tide. On the plains, General Worth sat astride a Zebstrika, a greatsword resting against his shoulder. He watched the approaching Pokémon Corps without the slightest hint of fear. Then he lifted his blade high. All units, charge with me. A thunderous roar answered him. 2 black waves collided as both armies surged forward. They were only moments from impact when the world changed. The clear sky dimmed, as if a shadow had swallowed the sun. A violent, biting cold rolled across the plain. Before the charging soldiers could even react, frost burst over them, ice crawling up armor, weapons, and limbs in a blink. Then a glacial blast swept through. Human soldiers and Pokémon alike were frozen where they stood, locked into place mid-stride, mid-breath.
Silence fell like a guillotine.
General Worth, still mounted farther back, stared at the frozen battlefield.
On the ramparts, Sharon went rigid.
What is this?"
Sharon choked out.
General Worth's eyes narrowed sharply, as if he'd sensed the source. Slowly, he looked up. High above them floated a colossal figure, an ancient ice-blue dragon radiating a pressure so cold it felt like it could crush the soul.
Kyurem.
Its golden eyes swept the ground with detached indifference.
Then Worth's pupils tightened. Because on Kyurem's back, there was a person. Kyurem descended, stopping at a height where everyone could clearly see the rider's face. The third prince. Lucian.
General Worth's expression cracked with disbelief.
Impossible.
On the walls, Sharon's shock was no less intense.
He recognized that face.
Just months ago, he'd visited the man's territory and spoken with him in person.
"My lord," Kron gasped. "That's Prince." "That's Prince Lucian," Sharon said, voice tight.
But even as he spoke, his eyes kept drifting back to Kyurem.
That level of power.
Then they heard it, one voice, carrying from above with absolute authority.
"Stop this war. Submit to me, or die." Chapter 174, Surrender. Stop the war. Submit to me, or die.
The words, amplified by Kyurem's draconic might, thundered across the battlefield.
An overwhelming pressure descended from the heavens, vast as a collapsing mountain.
The air itself seemed to freeze, crushing down upon every living being, stealing breath, pinning souls in place.
The Zebstrika shrieked and collapsed to the ground, its legs giving way as it trembled uncontrollably.
Its rider, the kingdom's foremost general, Worth, was torn from the saddle and slammed to his knees, his body shaking violently as he struggled merely to remain upright.
On the walls of Twin Dragon City, Sharon and Kron went pale. Within the city, countless civilians rushed out into the streets, drawn by instinct, fear, and awe.
At this moment, every gaze turned upward. There, in the sky, hovered a godlike figure. It was as though an ancient legend had stepped out of myth, a hero riding a dragon, descending from the heavens, freezing the battlefield in an instant, halting the tide of slaughter, and standing between the world and chaos. Just looking at that figure filled Sharon with an irresistible urge to submit.
"My lord!"
Kron cried, his voice trembling.
What is Prince Lucian trying to do?"
Sharon forced himself to remain composed, though his heart pounded wildly. At this moment, he understood clearly.
Prince Lucian was no longer watching from the sidelines. He was entering the struggle for the throne. That dragon.
A dragon capable of freezing tens of thousands in a heartbeat.
Even if Twin Dragon City mobilized every last soldier, they would be utterly powerless before such a being. "My lord. What should we do?" Kron whispered desperately. Sharon did not answer.
Instead, his gaze fixed upon the battlefield below, upon General Worth. The man drove his greatsword deep into the earth, using it to force himself back onto his feet. For the glory of Prince Landon, he roared. Raising his blade high, he declared war upon the god in the sky.
Lucian watched in silence.
If it were Geralt in that position, he would likely make the same choice. To stand and fight, even knowing death was certain.
For warriors like that, dying on the battlefield was not tragedy, but honor. Respect was due.
But mercy would not be given.
"Kyurem," Lucian said quietly. "Understood." Kyurem let out a deep, resonant roar.
An icy beam colder than death itself erupted forth, sweeping across the battlefield and engulfing Worth completely. There was no scream. When the frost finally dissipated, only a humanoid sculpture of solid ice remained, frozen forever in a final stance of defiance. Then Lucian's gaze shifted. It fell upon Sharon and his butler, Kron.
"Master."
Kron gasped, terror flooding his face as he imagined the same fate befalling them. Sharon swallowed hard, his throat dry. After witnessing the general's end, he lifted his head toward the sky and spoke, his voice echoing through the unnatural silence.
Prince Lucian. Are you also here to join this war? The question rippled outward. Civilians, Pokémon, soldiers. All eyes lifted skyward. Lucian's gaze swept slowly across the land below.
He saw children clutching their parents, faces white with fear.
Slaves with hollow eyes and emaciated bodies. Old women wrapped in patched, threadbare clothes.
Refugees who had lost their homes to war. Humans and Pokémon alike, maimed, crippled, broken. They looked up at him not with hope, nor hatred,
but emptiness. Waiting. Lucian exhaled slowly.
He had seen this scene too many times.
For ordinary people, war brought only loss.
When the fighting ended, nobles feasted in their gilded halls, dividing spoils beneath crystal chandeliers, while the common folk were left with nothing but graves, flowers, and memories of the dead. For this land, war meant only pain and tears. And as a transmigrator, as someone with the power to change all this, Lucian had only one desire: to act in a way that would let him face his own conscience without regret. He looked down at the people below and slowly spoke, his voice echoing across the land. Everyone, I am the third prince of the kingdom, Lucian. I have come here today not to start a new war, but to stop it.
What can war bring us? Nothing.
Almost every day, people and monsters lose their lives because of it. The soldiers who participate in the war will lose their lives.
But have you ever thought about this?
Your parents, your children, your fiancés are waiting for you at home, unable to sleep because of their constant worry.
The common people will lose their children.
The children you carried for 10 months and raised with such care.
You will never see their smiling faces again.
Hearing these words, the common people in Twin Dragon City could not help but be shaken.
Their children.
Their children had been forcibly conscripted into this war not long ago. They were children they had raised with joy and devotion, and now they did not even know whether they were alive.
Not only the civilian parents, but even the soldiers below showed hesitation and turmoil on their faces. At this moment, as they heard Lucian's words, the soldiers uncontrollably thought of their parents, of their fiancés waiting for them to return, of how their families had watched them grow from children into adults. Right now, those people must be worrying endlessly. If they died here, they would never return home.
They would never see their loved ones again. How much grief would that bring? Therefore, we should not fight for this, Lucian's deep voice echoed across the battlefield and into their hearts. We share the same blood. We should live like brothers. Humans and monsters alike have shared this land for thousands of years. I do not wish to start a new war. I am here to stop it. In the past 7 days, Ripple Town, Blue Wave City, Black Territory, Lycunosa Village, and Hinoki Castle have submitted to me. The flames of war have been extinguished, and both humans and monsters have returned to peaceful lives. Follow me, and Kiram and I will protect you. From now on, there will be no more war and no more slavery on this land. Everyone can live freely and equally. Humans and monsters alike. I swear in the name of royalty that in my kingdom, no one will ever again harm monsters. Monsters will live alongside humans in towns. Humans and monsters will use each other's strength to begin a new life together. Silence descended upon the battlefield. The eyes of the commoners and the Pokémon present trembled with disbelief. Then someone shouted from the crowd. Lucian! A second voice followed. Then a third. Lucian! 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 If you can stop the war, then bring peace back to this land. The purest wishes in the hearts of humans and Pokémon rose into the air, turning into cries and shouts that echoed across the plains. Sharon, standing atop the city wall, looked at the civilians behind him and let out a helpless smile. Your Highness Lucian. It seems our resistance is meaningless. From this moment on, Sharon and Twin Dragon City will obey your commands. Lucian nodded slightly.
Kurum surveyed the battlefield, its gaze calm and distant.
With a single thought, the ice binding the soldiers shattered with sharp cracking sounds.
Weapons clattered to the ground.
Soldiers and armored Pokémon stared at one another in stunned silence. Though frozen, they had heard everything. They had heard every word Prince Lucien spoke. The war here was over. For a long moment, no one moved.
What should they do now? Return to Prince Landon's army? Or stay here? They exchanged uncertain glances.
Finally, their eyes lifted toward the figure riding the dragon in the sky. All humans and magical beasts who no longer wish to participate in this war, go to Lucien City under my rule.
Someone there will accept you. While you are there, go and see the humans and magical beasts living together. I think you will find your answer. Lucien City? What kind of place was that? Many soldiers had never even heard of it. Lucien turned his gaze to Sharon and said, Sharon, you will send men to escort these soldiers and magical beasts to Lucien City.
Yes, Your Highness, Sharon replied.
He hesitated for a moment, then asked, And what will Your Highness do next?
Lucien understood his meaning and replied calmly. The war continues, and many places within the kingdom still await my rule. At present, he was using absolute power to bring these territories under control.
Governance could come later, once the war was completely ended.
As for whether the nobles and lords were truly loyal, Lucien did not care. If anyone rebelled, he would simply ride Kurum and descend before them. That alone would be enough. In this way, losses could be minimized. After giving Sharon several additional instructions, Lucien mounted Kurum and flew toward the next destination. After he departed, Sharon and Kron stood atop the city wall, watching his figure fade into the distance.
Kron could not help but murmur, My lord, are we truly going to betray Prince Lance? What betrayal? Sharon raised an eyebrow. No matter who wins in the end, it makes little difference to us. Prince Lance, Prince Landon, and Prince Lucien are all sons of the Kingdom of Eindhoek. This is ultimately a struggle for power between brothers. Besides, Sharon's thoughts drifted back to everything he had seen in Lucien City.
Now that I think about it, perhaps Prince Lucien is more suited to rule this land.
Both Prince Lance and Prince Landon were too extreme, as if they existed solely to oppose one another.
After pondering for a moment, Sharon changed the subject.
All right, Kron. The most important matter now is settling the refugees from Twin Dragon City.
Also, send food supplies and crop seeds from Twin Dragon City along with the soldiers to Lucien City.
Kron paused. My lord, why is that?
With so many people arriving all at once, Lucien City will likely face food shortages, Sharon explained.
Since we are now under His Highness Lucien's command, we should do our part. That way, if His Highness Lucien ultimately won the war, he would remember what Twin Dragon City had done today. Hearing this, Kron immediately understood.
My lord is wise, Kron said. I will make the arrangements at once.
The distance between Twin Dragon City and Lucien City was not great. After several days of arduous travel, this force of 50,000 humans and Pokémon finally arrived at their destination. Lucien City.
After Sharon's men conveyed their purpose and the identities of these people to the old king, Elif quickly took charge of settling the soldiers and Pokémon. In the end, the group was divided into two parts. One portion of the soldiers and Pokémon joined the Lucien City army under Geralt's command. Another portion, consisting of soldiers and Pokémon who no longer wished to fight, became civilians. They settled in Lucien City and began living ordinary lives. This sudden surge in population placed a heavy burden on Lucien City. There were shortages of housing and food, and with winter approaching, such a large population would also consume an enormous amount of firewood. How to deal with these issues became one of the main daily concerns for Elif and the old king. Fortunately, Lucien had anticipated this situation before leaving and had already left behind several solutions. First, a work-for-relief system was implemented. Soldiers and civilians could participate in the construction of Lucien City, helping to build new houses and infrastructure, and would receive wages from the city administration.
Second, efforts were made to bring the soldiers' families to Lucian City, giving them peace of mind and a sense of belonging.
Third, the autumn harvest was used to resolve the food shortage. With the additional supplies of grain sent from Twin Dragon City, the food problem for the soldiers and refugees was quickly alleviated. With the combined efforts of these soldiers and their Pokémon, the scale of Lucian City began to expand at a visibly rapid pace. The residents of Lucian City were already experienced in handling such growth. The influx of population greatly accelerated the city's development. New houses rose one after another. Fresh farmland and orchards were reclaimed. Ranches were established. Even the efficiency of ore extraction in the mines increased significantly. Inside the castle, Elif looked over the recent reports on the city's progress and could not help but exclaim in admiration.
Prince Lucian is truly amazing. Chapter 175, The Three Dragons Struggle. Cities had originally been nothing more than a low-ranking soldier in the 7th Legion of the Landon Army. He was born in a small town in the northern reaches of Castelia territory. Before the war broke out, he and several fellow villagers had been forcibly conscripted and sent to join the Landon Army. Cities deeply despised war. He had never wanted to fight, especially because Eindhoven had once been a united nation, only to be torn in two by the clashing ideologies of its two princes. A single thin line now divided the land into north and south. Not long ago, those in the south could still travel freely to the northern towns to visit relatives, meet friends, and conduct trade. But after the war erupted, the borders were sealed. Passage to the north was completely cut off. Worse still, cities had heard that Prince Lance was also conscripting soldiers on a massive scale. If his friends living in the northern towns were drafted as well, wouldn't that mean they might one day meet on the battlefield as enemies? That possibility had always haunted him. Yet all too often, what people fear most is exactly what comes to pass. On one battlefield, cities truly did see familiar faces among the opposing troops, several of his old friends, standing across from him. Just as the two sides were about to clash, Prince Lucian arrived. Riding the divine dragon Kirim, he halted the impending battle and stopped the war from erupting into full slaughter. Prince Lucian's address to the world struck cities deeply. He found himself agreeing wholeheartedly with every word. They shared the same blood. For thousands of years, they had lived together on this land. Why, then, should they kill one another? If he were forced to choose a ruler to serve, cities knew without hesitation that he would choose Prince Lucian over Prince Landon, and over Prince Lance. Thanks to Prince Lucian, the war came to an end. And so, these soldiers were brought to Prince Lucian's territory. There, cities witnessed a sight he had never seen before. The streets were clean and orderly. Humans and magical beasts lived together in harmony, peaceful and prosperous. Water-type monsters sprayed water to nourish flowers for the townsfolk. Flying monsters carried parcels in their beaks, helping deliver goods across the city. Fire-breathing monsters gathered before bakery ovens, using their flames to help bakers produce warm, soft, fragrant bread. The scene was reflected in everyone's eyes. Recalling Prince Lucian's earlier words, realization dawned on them all. Humans and monsters could truly live together like this. Even the monsters that had once served in the Lance army were left stunned by the sight. Imbor, Golduck, Agron, Magmar, Onyx, and many others stood frozen in disbelief. Afterward, the town hall staff began arranging accommodations for the newly arrived soldiers. Cities was fortunate enough to be assigned a 2-story house with a yard. Those soldiers who were not immediately given housing were instead assigned to help construct new homes and expand the town, working side by side with the monsters. At first, cities thought little of it. But after asking around, he was shocked to learn that anyone who helped with construction would be paid in gold coins. Upon hearing this, even soldiers who had already been given houses voluntarily joined the construction teams, throwing themselves into the city's expansion. During this time, town hall officials came to collect detailed information from them, their former hometowns, family members, and current family circumstances. Cities initially assumed this was nothing more than routine registration. Then one day, after returning home exhausted from a long day's labor,
he pushed open his door and froze. Inside the house stood his white-haired parents and his younger sister. His body stiffened. His eyes trembled. His face was filled with disbelief. "Big brother!" The little girl spotted him at once and ran forward, throwing herself into his arms. Feeling the warmth of her embrace, a single thought flashed through Siddy's mind: this wasn't a dream. All of it was real. "Father, Mother, how did you get here?" Siddy's asked, staring at his parents' excited expressions in disbelief. "It was Prince Lucien who sent someone to bring us," the elderly woman recalled with emotion. "That day, I was washing dishes at home when someone knocked on the door. He said, 'Your son has begun a new life in Lucien City. If you wish to see him, His Highness has ordered us to bring you there.' After that, they packed their belongings and followed the man without hesitation." Prince Lucien. Cities felt deeply shaken. In times of war, their hometown could not escape the tide of destruction. It was only a matter of time. Ever since leaving home, Cities had lived in constant fear that his parents might die in the war, or worse, be forced to wander as refugees. But now, they had all been safely brought here by Prince Lucien's people. The family of 4, survivors of hardship and separation, embraced tightly, tears streaming down their faces. In that moment, Cities silently made a decision. From this day forward, he would join Prince Lucien's army and fight to protect Lucien City. In an inn located in a town east of Castelia, an area untouched by the war, Lucien was resting there temporarily. With a single thought, the territory interface appeared before his eyes. Lord's name, Lucien. Territory, Lucien City, town under expansion. Subordinate territories: Twin Dragon City, Kagome Village, Ripple Town, Wave City, Black Territory, Hinoki Castle. Click to view details. Citizens, humans 52,358. Citizens, Pokémon 1,428. Popularity, 78, United. Satisfaction, 75,680. Technologies: animal husbandry, fishing, pottery, clay figurines, papermaking. It seems those 50,000 soldiers have temporarily integrated into Lucien City, Lucien thought. A population exceeding 53,000 already fulfilled one of the 3 requirements for advancing into the industrial age. The remaining 2 were: satisfaction greater than or equal to 100,000. Public morale greater than or equal to 90. Satisfaction could be accumulated steadily over time. The real issue was morale. The sudden influx of 50,000 people had diluted the city's original public morale of 95. However, Lucien wasn't worried. Once the war fully ended, morale would naturally recover. At that point, he would officially step into the industrial age, unlocking technologies such as steam engine, factory, energy development, steam train. When that time came, he would connect the entire Unova region through an old-fashioned steam railway. Yet compared to these plans, something else caught Lucien's attention. As more territories submitted to his rule, a new section, subordinate territories, had appeared on the interface. Lucien focused his mind, and information about Twin Dragon City surfaced instantly. Territory name: Twin Dragon City, Lord, Sharon, loyalty, 80, territory size, medium, territory population, 66,589. Even the loyalty of other lords is displayed? Lucien was mildly surprised. He continued checking the remaining subordinate territories. Kagome Village had the highest loyalty, at 96. Black Territory was the lowest, at only 30. As for Ripple Town, Wave City, and Hinoki Castle, their locations, far from the kingdom's center and close to the sea, meant their loyalty levels were moderate. Not high, but not dangerously low either. Lucien took a slow, deep breath, silently considering his next steps. The unification he had begun was only the start. Many more challenges still awaited him. In the aftermath of the war, everything would need to be rebuilt. Cities had to be reconstructed. Systems reformed. The Pokémon League was established. Trainer knowledge spread across the land.
All of these were essential tasks. But thinking about them now was still too far ahead. At present, the most urgent matter was dealing with Reshiram and Zekrom. Throughout Lucian's campaign, backed by Kuram's absolute power, nearly the entire eastern region of Unova had already submitted to him.
And now, Lucian's gaze settled on the central region of the map before him.
That was where Castelia territory lay.
And to the north of Castelia territory stretched the Castelia plains, where the main forces of his two elder brothers were stationed.
If Kuram could devour even one of them,
then no one in the Unova region would be capable of stopping him.
This was the terrifying might of legendary Pokémon.
Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kuram were equivalent to nuclear weapons in this world.
If Kuram alone could already exert such overwhelming influence, then what kind of power would Pokémon like Groudon, the so-called god of the earth, possess? The world was far too vast. Lucian wanted to see it with his own eyes.
After completing the unification and construction of the entire Unova region, he intended to travel beyond its borders, to witness what the rest of the world looked like in this era.
In Castelia City, a towering castle loomed over the town.
Upon the throne sat Prince Landon, listening intently to reports from his subordinates.
Suddenly, a scout burst into the hall. "Report! Your Highness, Prince Landon. Disaster has struck." Landon raised his gaze sharply. "What is it? Why are you in such a panic? Black Territory, Ripple Town, all of them have fallen.
The entire eastern part of the kingdom has completely slipped from our control. The kingdom's first general, Worth, has been killed in battle. The campaign against Twin Dragon City has failed."
At these words, Landon's pupils shrank violently. What happened? It was Prince Lucian.
"Your brother, Prince Lucian," the scout cried. "According to eyewitnesses, he descended upon the battlefields riding a divine dragon, ending the wars with absolute force. He compelled the local lords and armies to surrender and submit to him."
Lucian? Shock and disbelief surged through Landon's mind.
His third brother, Lucian, who had grown up playing within the royal city, who had never involved himself in politics or military affairs.
How could this be possible? A dragon. But as far as Landon knew, weren't the only opposing dragons Zekrom and Reshiram?
They had chosen him and his second brother, Lance, respectively.
So where had this third dragon come from? Countless thoughts collided in Landon's mind, leaving him momentarily frozen. "Your Highness," the scout asked cautiously, "what should we do?"
Prince Landon remained silent for a long time. He slowly closed his eyes, his brows knitting together as if weighing countless thoughts.
"Zekrom," he asked silently, "do you know the identity of the dragon beside Lucian?" The next instant, a deep, thunderous voice echoed within his mind. "That is Kuram." "Kuram?"
Landon was momentarily startled.
"That dragon was born alongside Reshiram and myself," Zekrom replied.
"Reshiram and I embody will, truth, and ideals.
Kuram is the physical vessel left behind."
There was a trace of surprise in Zekrom's voice.
"However,
I never expected it to choose a human as its partner, just as we did." At the same time, Lance had learned the truth from Reshiram. His expression was heavy with sorrow. He made no dramatic gesture, only walked slowly to the castle terrace, lifting his gaze toward the slightly overcast sky.
"Zekrom, Reshiram, Kuram. Are we three brothers truly destined to go to war? Lucian, why did you insist on stepping onto this battlefield?"
Confusion filled Lance's eyes.
Was this truly the fate awaiting the three of them? "Your Highness," a subordinate asked cautiously, "what should we do? Should we abandon Twin Dragon City?" Lance gently shook his head.
"There's no need to send troops to retake those cities for now," he said calmly.
"Instead, recall all forces from the other fronts and gather them here."
The subordinate hesitated.
"Your Highness, this is..." "My battle with my elder brother isn't over yet," Lance said softly.
"And Lucian will certainly arrive before it ends. As the one bonded with Reshiram, no one understood the terror of these dragons better than Lance.
Even the combined might of the entire kingdom would be meaningless before them. This would be the final confrontation.
And Zekrom, Reshiram, and Kuram would all take part, not as beasts, but as the manifestations of their respective wills.
Though still confused, the subordinate bowed deeply. "Yes, Your Highness." In an instant, undercurrents surged throughout the kingdom of Eindhoek.
The armies of Landon and Lance, previously engaged in battles across various regions, abruptly halted their operations. Then, as if summoned by a single, irresistible call, they began marching toward the same destination. Countless nobles and territorial lords watched in silence, fully aware that history was about to be written.
In mid-November of the 149th year of the kingdom calendar, Castelia territory welcomed its first snowfall of the year.
Amid the swirling snow, the final curtain rose on the struggle for the throne. Nearly 400,000 troops from both sides assembled on the Castelia plains, soldiers clad in steel armor, magical beasts encased in equally formidable plating.
Black banners symbolizing Landon's army fluttered violently in the snow.
Opposite them, the white banners of Lance's army waved in the frozen wind. The two vast formations faced each other, exuding a suffocating pressure.
High above the battlefield, the eldest prince, Landon, rode upon the dragon of ideals, Zekrom.
Facing him in the sky stood the second prince, Lance, mounted upon the dragon of truth, Reshiram. The two princes locked gazes across the heavens.
Neither spoke. As though waiting.
Suddenly, the snowfall stopped. Every snowflake in the air seemed frozen in place. Zekrom and Reshiram sensed something at the same time and turned their heads.
In the distance, an enormous ice-blue dragon emerged from the sky. That was Kuram. Riding upon its back, Lucian looked calmly at his two brothers. "You've come," Lance said quietly. "I've come," Lucian replied.
"You shouldn't have," Lance said, gently shaking his head, sadness flickering across his face. When they were young, the three of them had played together in the royal palace.
Back then, none of them could have imagined this ending.
Truly unexpected, Lucian laughed softly. But at this point, there's no turning back. We each carry too much upon our shoulders. Come, he said, his gaze firm. Let us fight for our respective beliefs.
Chapter 176, Perfect Fusion, White Kuram. On the Castelia plains, three forces arrived almost simultaneously.
Prince Landon looked toward his third brother, riding atop Kuram, then at the empty sky behind him. His voice was low and heavy as he spoke.
"When did my third brother become so arrogant?" Landon said coldly. "Do you really believe you can contend for that position with only your own strength?"
Lucian slowly shook his head.
"I am enough on my own." Arrogant.
Before Lance could finish speaking, a deep rumbling sound rolled in from the distance.
"His Highness is not alone." Everyone was startled and looked up.
A gray-blue banner surged over the horizon, and behind it came a vast, advancing army.
That force swept onto the Castelia plains, forming a three-way confrontation with the other two royal armies.
At the forefront stood Geralt, mounted upon the Haxorus. Behind him followed 50,000 soldiers and Pokémon, all bearing the insignia of Lucian City.
"Your Highness Lucian, we arrived too late." The soldiers behind Geralt were brimming with fighting spirit.
Unlike before, this time they had come of their own will. As subjects, they could not allow His Highness to face this battle alone.
Everything, for Lucian's beliefs. Everything, for their families living in Lucian City.
Geralt?
Lucian looked momentarily surprised at the newcomers.
"Your Highness Lucian," Geralt said firmly, "we are willing to serve you."
Territory after territory had already submitted.
Everyone knew the final battle between the three princes would take place here, on the Castelia plains. The moment the news reached Lucian City, they had rushed out without hesitation. Geralt let out a quiet breath of relief.
Fortunately, they had arrived just in time.
Prince Landon stared at the army before him, his thick brows furrowing deeply. He snorted coldly.
Traitors! All troops, heed my command. Attack! Kill the traitors! Charge! With a thunderous roar, Landon's 300,000 troops surged forward in a full-scale assault. Seeing this, Prince Lance let out a quiet sigh. "Gentlemen," he said calmly, "advance. Let our will be known to the world." The moment his words fell, the countless Pokémon beneath Reshiram moved in unison. War cries pierced the heavens. Dust and snow erupted together, churning into a vast white storm that swallowed the battlefield. Lucian watched the scene calmly. Seeing his two brothers make their choice, he simply sighed and shook his head. There is no need for any more sacrifices. Kyurem! Yes. Kyurem lowered its gaze toward the battlefield below. Its deep, ancient voice echoed across the land. The next instant, an overwhelming, primordial aura burst forth from its body. The atmosphere of the entire world seemed to shift. Zekrom and Reshiram trembled as they sensed it, their expressions paling in shock. Before the soldiers below could even react, an extreme cold swept across the battlefield. Crack! Ice surged upward from the ground. Feet. Legs. Torsos. Arms. Weapons. Helmets. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of thousands of soldiers and Pokémon were frozen solid, locked in place like statues of ice. The battlefield fell into absolute silence. Geralt and the others stared in disbelief, swallowing hard. A dragon, was this the true power of the dragon called Kyurem? High above, Prince Landon snapped his head upward, his gaze locked onto Kyurem. Prince Lance, too, looked on in shock. There is no need for so many innocent people, human or Pokémon, to be dragged into the conflict between the three of us, Lucian said calmly to his brothers. A flicker of fear flashed through Landon's eyes. But as a king, he steadied himself and spoke in a deep voice. Zekrom, proclaim our beliefs to the world. Lance closed his eyes. Reshiram, he whispered softly, to fulfill our wish, give it everything you have. We have sensed your beliefs. Light ignited in the eyes of Reshiram and Zekrom. Human beliefs surged and amplified their power. Their tail turbines roared to life, one spewing azure lightning, the other crimson flames. In an instant, the two dragons entered an overclocked state. Their auras swelled dramatically, their power clearly rising to an even greater level. On the ground, Geralt and the others grew tense. Reshiram and Zekrom had grown stronger, yet Kyurem remained unchanged. Your Highness. Is this the blessing that human belief grants Reshiram and Zekrom? Lucian watched the scene calmly. Then let me see just how vast your belief in changing this world truly is. Roar! With a thunderous dragon's roar, Zekrom unleashed a massive barrage of intersecting lightning bolts, launching a devastating assault at both Reshiram and Kyurem at once. Boom! Rolling dark clouds swallowed the sky as deep blue lightning tore through the heavens, nearly covering the entire firmament in crackling arcs of destruction. Facing the onslaught, Reshiram spread its pure white wings. The temperature of the surrounding air surged sharply. Wisps of flame spiraled around its body, rapidly condensing into a massive, blazing fireball above its head. The fireball met the lightning head-on. Two completely different forces collided, and the resulting shockwave was even more terrifying. Boom! A colossal explosion tore through the sky, splitting the heavens in two, half bathed in searing red, the other drowned in electric blue. At the same time, Kyurem released an overwhelming wave of extreme cold, its icy breath spreading outward and completely neutralizing the remaining lightning. Zekrom and Reshiram shot upward, their massive forms spiraling higher and higher, transforming into two streaks of light that crossed the sky like shooting stars before colliding violently once more. Lucian did not immediately send Kyurem into the fray. He simply watched. The power of legendary Pokémon was truly terrifying. Only now did he fully understand how the dragon vein of the Unova region had once been destroyed. At this moment, Lucian felt an overwhelming sense of relief that he had chosen to walk his own path. Otherwise, with the unchecked power of Zekrom and Reshiram, the devastation inflicted upon this land would have been far more catastrophic. Kyurem, Lucian said in a low voice, reclaim your true power.
Kiram gave a slight nod, its gaze fixed on the two clashing figures high above. The next instant, its massive body moved. It vanished, transforming into an ice-blue afterimage. An unimaginably terrifying power erupted from its core, sweeping outward like a roaring storm, spreading in every direction. Frozen world. In just a few breaths, the entire Castelia plains were sealed in ice. This was Kiram deliberately restraining its strength. If it were to release its full power, perhaps half of Unova would be frozen solid in an instant. In midair, Reshiram was the first to be affected by that overwhelming power. Its massive body shuddered, and a thin layer of frost crept rapidly across its white scales. Sensing the danger, Reshiram erupted with searing flames. Blazing heat surged outward, instantly melting the ice that clung to its body. But Zekrom was not so fortunate. Before it could even react, its enormous dragon form was sealed in solid ice, then hurled downward like a meteor, crashing violently onto the plains below. Reshiram was stunned. What was happening? Both it and Zekrom had clearly absorbed the amplified power of human belief, so why were they still utterly suppressed by Kiram's physical form? Before Reshiram could think further, Kiram's colossal body was already upon it. Wings bristling with jagged ice spikes clamped tightly around Reshiram's body. An irresistible force surged forth, as if trying to pull Reshiram apart and absorb it completely. Kiram was attempting to devour it, to reclaim its power. Realizing this, Reshiram struggled violently. Prince Lance, riding upon Reshiram's back, felt the dragon's panic. His expression darkened as he looked up toward Lucian, who stood calmly atop Kiram. "What have you done?" Lance shouted in shock. Lucian simply shook his head. "Second brother, haven't you realized it yet?" Lance froze for a moment, then asked instinctively. "Realized what?" "The so-called beliefs you and our eldest brother cling to," Lucian said calmly, "are nothing more than justifications for fighting over the throne. Since the day this war began, countless humans and magical beasts have lost their homes and their lives. Is this the liberation you claim to be pursuing?" Lucian's gaze was steady, unflinching. "Can't you see it? If this war continues, how many more humans and magical beasts will be buried on this land?" Lance clenched his teeth. "All of this is a necessary sacrifice," he shouted. "When the war ends, no one will enslave magical beasts on this land ever again. That is the world I intend to create." "So this is the path you chose?" Lucian replied firmly. "No. You're wrong. Humans and magical beasts are both inhabitants of this land. Even I cannot guarantee complete separation between the two, unless only humans are left alive. That won't happen." Lance protested, but his voice wavered. "The dragon veins have already been thrown into chaos by your struggle with our elder brother," Lucian said gravely. "If this continues, the dragon veins will collapse entirely. And when that happens, the disaster that follows will not spare either humans or magical beasts." Dragon veins, collapsing? Lance's pupils shrank. As a royal, he understood all too well what the destruction of dragon veins meant. At that moment, the foundation of his belief cracked visibly. Lucian extended his hand toward Lance, and toward Reshiram. "Second brother," he said quietly, "leave the rest to Kiram and me. Your ideals do not conflict with mine. You've been to Lucian City. You've seen humans and magical beasts living together. As long as both races exist, conflict is inevitable. That much cannot be changed. What we must do is guide them, help these two entirely different races coexist, merge, and shape a better world together." A better world. Confusion flickered in Lance's eyes. Scenes from his visit to Lucian City resurfaced in his mind. He hadn't studied them carefully at the time, but he remembered clearly how freely the magical beasts there lived. How peaceful they seemed. Slowly, an unfamiliar thought surfaced. Perhaps Lucian was right. Lance looked at the overwhelming Kiram before him and gave a bitter smile. "Then why tell me all this?" he asked softly. "You could have simply devoured Reshiram and me."
Lucian met his gaze.
Because what I seek is not domination, he said slowly.
It is recognition.
I want you, and Reshiram, to acknowledge my ideals.
Kiram and I will create a world more suitable for humans, and a world more suitable for magical beasts. There will be no oppression.
No war, Lucian said calmly. Whether human or magical beasts, everyone will be able to live freely and happily, working together, growing together, living together, and fighting together.
Does such a world really exist? Lance asked softly, almost unconsciously. I promise, Lucian replied. Lance fell silent.
After a moment, he shook his head and let out a helpless, wry smile.
Third brother, you've truly grown up.
In the next instant, a dazzling white radiance erupted from Reshiram's body.
Pure, blazing energy, both pristine and scorching, flowed steadily into Kiram.
As Reshiram's will merged into it, Kiram finally began to recover its original, complete power.
Bathed in light, Kiram's form rapidly transformed. Its upper body straightened as it rose onto two legs.
The icy horn on its left side dissolved, replaced by soft white fur resembling Reshiram's. For the first time, pupils ignited within its eyes, burning with flame-colored light. Its left forelimb transformed into a wing-like appendage similar to Reshiram's, while its right forelimb became a mirrored construct of pure ice.
Its original wings folded neatly into its shoulders.
White downy fur spread along its collar and back. The ice encasing its tail shattered completely, revealing a white, heat-generating organ, identical in nature to Reshiram's blazing tail.
Buzz! A strange, resonant hum echoed through the sky.
In a flash of light, Reshiram's form vanished entirely from the world. In its place stood a Blaze Kiram, a being that had foreseen a true future shared between humans and Pokémon, and had chosen to safeguard it. Lance felt the pressure around him vanish all at once. Just as his body began to fall, a pair of warm, powerful hands reached out from the white light and firmly caught his arms.
Lance opened his eyes.
Lucian was standing before him, his gaze unwavering. Second brother, Lucian said solemnly.
I will fulfill your wish. Leave the rest to me. Lucian raised a pokeball.
A flash of white light burst forth, and Dragonite emerged into the sky.
Under Lucian's guidance, Dragonite gently carried Lance back down to the ground.
At that moment, a massive bolt of lightning tore through the heavens.
With a deafening roar, Zekrom, which had been frozen solid, finally shattered the ice restraining it and surged back into the sky. Prince Landon stared in disbelief at Lucian and the newly transformed Blaze Kiram.
His thick brows were drawn tight, his eyes filled with shock and confusion.
What have you done?
Brother, Lucian said calmly, it's time to end this.
End it? Landon roared. Impossible. He refused to accept it. His 300,000 troops still stood ready.
His ambitions remained unfulfilled. His ideals had yet to be realized.
How could it possibly end like this?
Third brother, Landon growled, fury blazing in his eyes, since you insist on interfering in this war, don't blame me for showing no mercy.
Zekrom, he roared. Give me all your power. Sensing the overwhelming resolve of the human it had chosen, Zekrom's turbine engine flared brilliantly, its blue light burning brighter than ever before. Boom! The sky itself responded. Countless dark clouds gathered from all directions, each one swelling with terrifying thunderous energy. Chapter 177. Origin Dragon. Boom!
Terrifying lightning raged wildly within the dark clouds, each bolt seeming to carry the power to shatter the world itself.
Bathed in endless azure lightning, Zekrom's jet-black form weaved ceaselessly through the clouds. Bolt after bolt struck its body, thunder crashing relentlessly as an incomparably dreadful aura radiated outward.
On the ground, the soldiers stared in sheer terror at the apocalyptic spectacle before them.
Prince Lucian. This scene was utterly beyond Geralt and the others' comprehension.
They had seen countless Pokémon in their lives, but never anything like this.
This was no ordinary Pokémon. It was a walking calamity.
If its full power were unleashed, the entire kingdom would likely be wiped from existence.
Too weak. Compared to Zekrom, they were far too insignificant. At this level of battle, they could offer no help at all. Gerald clenched his weapon tightly. Thump. The sound echoed in his ears like a heartbeat. All around him, soldiers watched in silent horror. Could Prince Lucien truly withstand Prince Landon's assault? Instinctively, everyone lifted their gaze toward the sky. Lucien remained calm. Mounted upon White Curum, he hovered high above the battlefield, his expression composed. White Curum floated steadily in midair, its gaze serene and detached. White fur rippled gently in the wind as azure lightning reflected faintly in its eyes. At last, the lightning surrounding Zekrom reached its limit. The thunder within the clouds abruptly ceased, as if every last trace of energy had been absorbed into its body. Zekrom slowly descended, its crimson gaze locking onto White Curum. No one can stop my domination. Landon roared. I am Landon, eldest prince of the kingdom of Eindhoek. In my name, I will crush everything before me. In the next instant, Zekrom moved. Wrapped in surging azure lightning, it launched itself forward in a feral charge toward Lucien and Curum. This was its strongest technique, lightning strike. White Curum watched quietly, its eyes narrowing slightly as a slow breath escaped its nostrils. Lucien's gaze swept across the battlefield below, across the humans and Pokémon watching in fear. After a brief pause, he closed his eyes. Then he opened them again, resolve blazing within. Big brother, forgive me. The next moment, an utterly terrifying power erupted from White Curum's body. The dense storm clouds overhead were torn apart instantly. Scorching yet frigid icy blue flames surged skyward, carrying an aura that seemed capable of freezing and incinerating everything in existence as they roared straight toward Zekrom. Ice Burn, the ultimate attack of White Curum. The sky was dyed in clashing hues as the two opposing energies collided head-on. A deafening explosion tore through the heavens. An overwhelming shockwave rippled outward, followed by a colossal mushroom cloud rising into the sky. Prince Lucien, someone cried out in alarm. At that moment, every human and Pokémon within Lucien's ranks held their breath in fear. Then, a dark figure plummeted from the mushroom cloud like a broken kite, crashing violently toward the ground. It was Prince Landon. Countless eyes widened in disbelief. Before anyone could even react, the unharmed White Curum surged forward, catching up instantly with the falling Zekrom. That was a complete defeat. Prince Landon and his dragon had been utterly crushed, defeated in a single move by Prince Lucien. Shock spread across everyone's faces. At this moment, White Curum had already caught up to Zekrom. That single exchange had not only gravely injured Zekrom, it had completely shattered Prince Landon's ambition and belief. The heavily wounded Zekrom no longer possessed the strength to protect its chosen human. Landon's body was finally torn free, plummeting helplessly toward the ground. Dragonite! Lucien shouted. Whoosh! Dragonite shot upward from the battlefield, catching the unconscious Landon with perfect precision. Lucien then shifted his gaze back to the battered Zekrom. White Curum's claws clamped tightly around Zekrom's body, as though preparing to devour it as well. Sensing imminent destruction, Zekrom struggled instinctively despite its grievous injuries. Lucien, it's all yours now. Zekrom's deep voice echoed within Lucien's mind. In the next instant, a flash of white light enveloped Lucien. His consciousness was pulled away, and appeared within a pitch-black void. Before him lay Zekrom's shattered body, sprawled motionless at the center of the space. This was Zekrom's inner world. The howling wind, Curum's heavy breathing, the shouts of soldiers below, all sound vanished. Lucien stepped forward, knelt before Zekrom's massive head, and gently placed a hand upon it. Zekrom, you've lost. Zekrom did not respond immediately. Its azure eyes silently watched the human before it. I want to create a world where humans and Pokémon can live together, Lucien said steadily. This is my ideal, Zekrom. Please, join me in realizing it. An unwavering force surged from Lucien's voice.
This conviction was even stronger than that of the human Zekrom had once acknowledged. And this ideal was far grander, far more profound, one that stirred longing rather than conquest.
Zekrom hesitated. "Is this truly your ideal?" it murmured.
Lucian extended his right hand.
"Reality and ideals are not opposites," he said calmly. "Ideals are forged from reality, and realized through it.
Without reality, ideals are nothing but illusions.
Zekrom, Kurum and I will accept everything, reality and ideals, you and Reshiram alike. We will create a future without war, and without oppression."
Zekrom stared at the human before it in silence.
Then,
"I understand," Zekrom said slowly, its voice growing firm.
"I feel your conviction." In the next instant, Lucian's consciousness returned to the real world.
The wind roared around him.
Riding atop White Kurum, he looked down at the now unresisting Zekrom and understood its choice. "Kurum," Lucian shouted, "merge!"
White Kurum's gaze sharpened.
The next second, a blinding radiance burst forth from Zekrom. The scene that had once unfolded with Reshiram repeated itself.
The will that embodied ideals finally returned to its origin.
A deep, solemn power flowed forth, merging seamlessly into White Kurum's form.
Within the radiant light, Kurum transformed once again.
Black elements slowly surfaced, interweaving perfectly with white and gray.
The primordial dragon, the original dragon, source of truth, ideals, and emptiness, returned to the world.
Even standing still, its vast and divine form radiated boundless majesty.
A presence so overwhelming that all who beheld it felt an instinctive urge to bow in reverence.
Slash!
On the ground, as the three dragons of the Tao merged into one, the frozen soldiers gradually thawed.
One by one, bodies regained warmth. Armor creaked as ice cracked and fell away.
At that moment, everyone raised their heads. Their gazes locked onto the colossal dragon soaring high above the sky, and the young man riding upon its back.
Was the war over? The younger soldiers looked around in confusion, glancing at their comrades, then at their former enemies.
Their king had fallen.
Continuing the war no longer held any meaning. Lord Lucian.
Unlike them, Lucian's army erupted into thunderous cheers. Their lord had won. From this day forward, everyone understood one truth: the kingdom of Eindhoek now belonged to its youngest prince. Third brother.
Watching the scene unfold, Prince Lance wore a bitter smile.
He glanced at his unconscious elder brother, thrown aside by the overwhelming clash, and murmured softly, "Perhaps, this really is the best possible outcome." A ray of golden sunlight pierced through the thick clouds, illuminating the shattered land, and the faces of countless soldiers.
Lucian, riding atop the original dragon, looked down upon the world below. Then, his voice rang out. "I hereby declare. From this moment onward, the war is over."
Empowered by the dragon beneath him, his words echoed across the plains, across cities and villages, across the entire land, as though announcing the dawn of a new era. On a distant cliff, three figures watched silently. The sacred swordsmen, Cobalion, Verizian, and Tarakian, had arrived too late to intervene, yet just in time to witness the end. "Lucian did it," Cobalion said softly, relief evident in his eyes.
"Ha! I knew he would."
Tarakian laughed, excitement barely contained.
"Good," Verizian said, finally relaxing. Then its gaze shifted toward the vast sea of human soldiers below. "However, this is not the end."
The war was finished, but many things still awaited this land.
The war ended.
Though it had not lasted long, it left deep scars upon the Unova region.
Villages and towns were reduced to ruins amid fire and chaos. The land as a whole stood in desperate need of rebuilding. With the defeat of Prince Landon and Prince Lance, all their territories and armies were brought under Lucian's control. Faced with Lucian and the dragon's absolute power, even unwilling lords had no choice but to submit.
Soon after, the old king officially proclaimed.
Prince Lucian was the rightful heir, and the next king of Eindhoek. Meanwhile, stories spread rapidly among the common folk.
During the war, Lucian and Lucian City had taken in refugees, prevented unnecessary bloodshed, and protected civilians whenever possible. Word of these deeds spread from mouth to mouth. In a short time, Lucien's reputation among the people reached unprecedented heights. It was said that Prince Lucien, unable to bear seeing humans and Pokémon lose their homes and lives, had chosen to end the war himself, together with the dragon, to save everyone.
Inside the castle of Lucien City,
Elise stood quietly, watching Lucien seated behind his desk, flipping through stacks of documents. "Your Highness," he said softly, "the coronation ceremony is about to begin."
Lucien nodded faintly.
Beyond the castle walls, he could already hear the cheers of the people. A week had passed since the Battle of the Castelia Plains.
Peace had finally arrived, but Unova lay in ruins.
There was still far too much to be done.
Next came the true work, rebuilding Unova.
Establishing the Pokémon League.
Spreading trainer culture. Guiding humans and Pokémon toward true coexistence. Only through this could the two races be gradually integrated.
Lucien's gaze then shifted to the data before him, the loyalty levels of the subordinate lords. Most had risen to 50 or 60 since the war's conclusion.
Sharon of Twin Dragon City had even reached 90. Yet some lords still lingered at 20 or 30.
Lucien's thoughts moved swiftly. He knew this path would inevitably make him an enemy of entrenched nobles and conservative lords.
But Lucien was not afraid. With Trinity Curum now at his side, no one in the Unova region could stop him.
Lucien's gaze fell upon the Curum standing behind him.
Pokémon, Unova Curum. Type, Dragon/Ice. Gender, genderless.
Ability, type switching, can freely switch between ice, dragon, fire, and electric types, and can use moves without being affected by the opponent's abilities. Moves: Dragon Rage, Icy Wind, Ancient Power, Shadow Claw, Dragon Claw, Dragon Tail, Ice Beam, Dragon Breath, Slash, Dragon Pulse, Blizzard, Hyper Voice, Stone Edge, Hail, Rest, Snowscape, Avalanche, Seal, Outrage, Freeze Dry, Absolute Zero, Frozen World, Extreme Cold Flame, Crossfire, Crosslight.
Friendship, 100. Curum's history, omitted. Looking at Curum's updated status, Lucien finally let out a quiet breath. After fusing with Reshiram and Zekrom, Curum had inherited all of their abilities.
Its power had ascended to an entirely new realm.
More importantly, its new ability made it the true apex dragon.
"Curum," Lucien said calmly, "I'll be relying on you from now on."
Curum inclined its head slightly.
Its deep voice echoed softly.
"You should go and meet the humans and Pokémon."
"No rush," Lucien replied.
"There's still half an hour before the coronation ceremony."
Before that, he had something else to do.
With that thought, Lucien stood, descended the castle's spiral staircase, and entered a room below. Lance stood by the window, gazing at the humans and Pokémon gathered outside the castle. They were cheering, anticipating,
waiting for the birth of a new king.
At this moment, humans and Pokémon seemed indistinguishable from one another. "Second brother," Lucien called.
Lance turned toward him, took a deep breath, and spoke quietly. "You were right, third brother. Compared to you, eldest brother's beliefs, and mine, were far too narrow.
From now on, Eindhoek is in your hands. And what do you plan to do next?" Lucien asked. For the first time, with everything settled, Lance felt an unfamiliar sense of relief.
He closed his eyes. "The world is vast," he said. "I want to leave the kingdom, and see it for myself."
Lucien was silent for a moment.
Then, recalling the Pokémon housed in the territory's breeding center, he said,
"Second brother, why not visit the breeding center before you leave? You might find a magical beast that resonates with you. Traveling together would make the journey less lonely." "Thank you," Lance said softly. "Go," he added. "Your coronation is about to begin. Those people and magical beasts, they're all waiting for you."
Lucien nodded, left the room, and walked toward another chamber. Inside, the eldest prince, Landon, sat on the bed, staring blankly into space.
Hearing footsteps, he lifted his head. "You've come."
Second brother plans to leave the kingdom and see the world, Lucian said.
"What about you, eldest brother? You're letting us go?" Landon asked, eyes narrowing. "You're not afraid my son and I will return one day for revenge?"
"I promised father," Lucian replied. He walked to the window, looking out at the clear blue sky, where soft white clouds drifted lazily.
"Besides, if I defeated you once, I can defeat you again." Landon gave a bitter laugh. "You really have one." "Fine," he said after a moment. "From today onward, the kingdom is yours. If my second brother is leaving, then I'll leave as well.
I'd like to see what this world looks like beyond the throne."
Chapter 178, Coronation. Lucian's city was exceptionally lively today.
Countless nobles, travelers, and lords from every corner of the land had gathered here, not only to attend the coronation ceremony of the new king of the Kingdom of Eindhoven, but also to witness with their own eyes the monarch who had ended the war.
At 9 o'clock in the morning, an ocean of humans and Pokémon filled the plaza before the castle. Cheers rose endlessly as everyone waited for the new king to appear.
Among the crowd, members of the House of Macamp waved their massive arms enthusiastically, shouting until their voices grew hoarse. Their time in Lucian City had been the happiest period of their lives. If there could be only one king in this land, then the hundreds of Pokémon from the House of Macamp would vote for Lucian with both hands and both feet. Because of Lucian, they had been freed from slavery.
Because of Lucian, they no longer feared the whip of cruel masters.
Because of Lucian, they had a home, a place where they could live among others and even work in professions they loved.
"Mom! Teacher Lucian is amazing!" Anna exclaimed excitedly, gazing up at the magnificent castle.
"Yes," Ellie replied warmly, emotion filling her voice. "With His Highness Lucian here, our lives will only get better." A year ago, they had been struggling just to survive. And now, only a year later, their prince was about to become king. Though she was merely an ordinary woman, Ellie could feel it clearly. With Lucian, Eindhoven was about to enter a brand new era. Below the castle gates, Geralt and his knights stood guard, clad in gleaming new armor, weapons held firmly in hand.
Beside them were disciplined, powerful Pokémon. A towering Agron, its steel body radiating oppression. An elegant Altaria, wings gently shifting in the breeze. This Pokémon legion was not to be underestimated. More importantly, it was completely different from the forces once commanded by the first and second princes. Several lords stared at the formation, their expressions darkening. Lord Sharon of Twin Dragon City noticed their reactions and chuckled. "You're not still thinking about betraying His Highness Lucian, are you?" The lords remained silent, their dissatisfaction with the sudden rise of the third prince plainly visible. Seeing this, Sharon accepted a cup of hot honey drink from his butler, Kron, and said leisurely, "Careful now. His Highness might just ride a dragon to pay you a visit." The lords? They hadn't witnessed the war themselves, but they had heard the stories. How Prince Lucian, unable to bear more bloodshed, had ordered the dragons to freeze entire armies, preventing soldiers from slaughtering one another. How he had personally defeated both elder princes and absorbed the power of the two legendary dragons. Freezing hundreds of thousands of soldiers in an instant was far beyond anything they could comprehend. "What's there to be afraid of?" Sharon scoffed. "A bunch of old fogies." He had long since realized that Pokémon weren't terrifying at all. In fact, they produced countless delicious, interesting, and useful things. For example, the honey produced by Combi and Vespiquen. Sharon now drank a cup of hot honey every day without fail. Living alongside Pokémon was surprisingly enjoyable. Hearing this, several lords fell into thoughtful silence. Some recalled their experiences in Lucian City over the past 2 days. Food produced by Pokémon. Drinks brewed by Pokémon. Houses built by Pokémon. In services provided by Pokémon. The Pokémon of Lucian City were nothing like the ones they remembered. They were friendly. Simple. Kind. Slowly, many of them began to agree with Sharon.
Since resistance was impossible, accepting this new king didn't seem like such a bad choice after all.
Sister! His Highness Lucian is coming out. Lena was so nervous it was as if she were about to be crowned. Seeing her expression, Selena couldn't help but smile helplessly. Relax. There's no need to be that nervous. Lena's eyes shone. Sister, do you think we'll be able to live in Lucian City like this forever? Will no one ever call us a curse again?
Yes, Selena said softly, nodding. His Highness Lucian promised us.
That's wonderful.
Lena hugged her sister tightly, cheering with unrestrained joy. Inside the castle, Elif spoke respectfully. Your Highness Lucian, the coronation ceremony is about to begin. I know, Lucian replied with a small nod.
Let's go.
After meeting with his two brothers, he ascended to the top floor of the castle. The terrace was already filled with both humans and Pokémon.
Maids moved quietly through the crowd.
Guards stood alert with weapons in hand. A Dragonite with wide, curious eyes.
A proud and elegant superior. The majestic and awe-inspiring Kiram. Clumsy Gullet rolling about.
And an overexcited Larvesta. And standing solemnly apart, the three sacred swordsmen who had once sworn to protect Pokémon everywhere, Cobalion, Virizion, and Terrakion. Under the combined gaze of humans and Pokémon alike, Lucian stepped forward. He stopped at the edge of the terrace.
And looked down upon his people. The moment he appeared, a thunderous wave of cheers erupted from the crowd below. Prince Lucian! Prince Lucian! Prince Lucian! The cries surged endlessly, echoing across the city like rolling thunder. Lucian inclined his head slightly toward his people.
Nearby, the old king watched the scene with deep emotion. He then lifted the golden crown, its surface inlaid with brilliant gemstones, and slowly stepped forward to begin the coronation. Lucian, the old king said solemnly, his voice steady yet filled with pride, you are my most outstanding child.
I am truly proud of you.
From this day onward, the kingdom of Eindhoek shall officially be placed under your rule.
Rest assured, father.
Lucian bowed slightly in response. The old king raised the crown and, with his own hands, placed it upon his son's head. Clad in a flowing crimson royal cloak, Lucian stood crowned, surrounded by Pokémon, with Kiram at their head.
He looked down upon his people. At long last, Eindhoek had welcomed a new king.
Cheers and shouts filled the air, and in that moment, time itself seemed to stand still. A painter standing among the crowd captured the coronation in oil upon canvas. That painting was later acquired by a wealthy collector, carefully wrapped in black cloth, and preserved with great reverence.
Perhaps thousands of years in the future, it would re-emerge,
allowing people of a distant age to glimpse, through its faded colors, the splendor of the first king of the United Kingdom, and the moment a new era was born.
Chapter 179, Ushering in the Industrial Age. After the coronation ceremony, Lucian officially ascended the throne of Eindhoek. By Lucian's arrangement, the eldest prince, Landon, and the second prince, Lance, departed from the Unova region, boarding a ship bound for lands unknown. This had been their own choice. Though the old king was reluctant, he ultimately could not stop them. His three children had all grown up. They each had their own paths to walk, and as a father, he could no longer restrain them as he once had in their childhood. After seeing his two sons off, the old king seemed to age overnight. Victini hovered anxiously at his side.
Lucian noticed the change at once.
After some thought, he asked gently, "Father, would you like to return to Eindhoek?" After all, it was the land where the old king had lived for decades. Perhaps returning there would ease his heart.
However, the old king shook his head and refused.
"It's quite nice staying here with you.
The humans and magical beasts of Lucian City are full of vitality," he continued. "Compared to that, Eindhoek feels old-fashioned and rigid."
"In that case," Lucian said after a moment, "I'll arrange a mansion for you and Victini here in the city."
His older brothers might be unreliable, but as a son, he would still care for his aging father. The old king nodded and accepted the arrangement.
After settling his father, Lucian returned to the castle. Winter had arrived. The air grew colder, and soft white snowflakes drifted down from the sky. Inside the castle, a roaring fireplace filled the room with warmth. A group of Minchino and a Dragonite sat on a thick, plush cashmere carpet, happily playing with toys. In one corner of the room, Kiram rested quietly, eyes closed, as if sleeping. Looking at the scene, Lucian felt his spirits lift. He walked over, patted this one, ruffled that one, and spent some time playing with Dragonite and the others. Only after that did he finally turn to his duties. Now that the kingdom had returned to peace and North and South were once again unified, there was still an overwhelming amount of work ahead. Lucian sat behind his desk, reviewing the detailed reports Elif had prepared on the various territories of the kingdom. Seven Treasures territory, located in the southeastern part of the Unova region, was a critical logistics and freight hub of Eindhoven. Castelia territory, situated along the southern coast of Unova, was a prosperous port city with thriving fishing and maritime trade, one of the kingdom's most important gateways. Sailboat City, much like Castelia territory, was also a port city. Strong winds were common year-round, making sailing culture especially prominent. Its docks served as berths for both cargo vessels and fishing ships, and its vast marketplace was famous across the region. Beyond these lay Blowing Ridge territory, Snowflake territory, Twin Dragons territory, and smaller settlements such as Deer Town. Lucian leaned back slightly, gazing at the information in silence. After a moment, he opened his territory interface to review the current state of his rule. Lord's name, Lucian. Territory, Lucian City, under expansion. Subordinate territories, Twin Dragon City, Kagome Village, Ripple Town, Blue Wave Castle, Black Territory, Hinoki Castle. Click to view details. Lucian City residents, humans 73,358. Lucian City residents, Pokémon 1,628. Total population, 8.23 million. Popularity, 93, United. Satisfaction, 175,680. Technologies, animal husbandry, fishing, pottery, clay figurines, papermaking. Thanks to the coronation ceremony, the name Lucian City had spread far and wide. In recent days, nobles and commoners alike from many regions had chosen to relocate to this rising city. As a result, Lucian City's population had surpassed 70,000. With the sudden population surge, food supplies were beginning to tighten. Fortunately, Lucian City was rich in mineral resources. These could be traded with other territories to secure sufficient food and maintain stability, for now. The kingdom's total population is only a little over 8 million? Lucian frowned as he looked at the number displayed on the panel. It was surprisingly low. In truth, the Pokémon world was famously sparsely populated. Beyond humans, countless Pokémon inhabited this land, sharing space, labor, and survival. Perhaps the existence of Pokémon had, in some way, replaced what might otherwise have been a far larger human population. However, what truly caught Lucian's attention was something else entirely. The current data of his territory already met the conditions to advance into the Industrial Age. The Industrial Revolution demanded a sufficiently large population, and 8 million across the kingdom was more than enough to sustain it. Lucian's gaze shifted to the technology tree. Industrial Age, after unlocking, the era will officially advance from the Agricultural Age to the Industrial Age. This will unlock related technologies such as steam engine, factory, energy development, steam train. Requirements: satisfaction greater than or equal to 100,000, territory population greater than or equal to 50,000, public morale greater than or equal to 90. Lucian didn't hesitate. Unlock. With a single thought, a dazzling green light surged across the massive technology tree. Click. As if an invisible lock had been shattered, the once clear boundary between the Agricultural Age and the Industrial Age dissolved. The previously dim branches above it lit up one by one. Industrial Age successfully unlocked. You may now unlock Industrial Age technologies using satisfaction. Lucian's eyes swept across the newly revealed technologies.
Steam engine unlocks the principles and manufacturing methods of steam engines.
Requirement 100,000 satisfaction.
Factory unlocks factory theory, enabling centralized production, handicrafts such as textiles, tools, etc.
Requirement 20,000 satisfaction.
Energy development unlocks the extraction and utilization of mineral energy such as coal and steel.
Requirement 50,000 satisfaction. Steam train unlocks railway construction, operation theory, and steam locomotive manufacturing. Requirement 100,000 satisfaction.
Lucien's gaze lingered on each entry, his heart stirring. Every one of these technologies was vital. The steam engine was the cornerstone of the Industrial Revolution. Factories would centralize labor, streamline processes, and dramatically increase productivity. Steam trains would connect the entire United Kingdom, shrinking distances between territories and drawing people closer together than ever before.
Unfortunately, each of them required an enormous amount of satisfaction.
After the era advancement, Lucien's remaining satisfaction stood at only 70,000.
Enough to unlock factory and energy development.
But not enough for the steam engine. Compared to the steam engine, the two available technologies were clearly of secondary importance.
Lucien let out a slow breath. It seems the next priority is still satisfaction. At present, both the Grand Library and the Grand Arena within the territory were already complete.
Perhaps next, he could have the Trainer Association organize exhibition battles for the civilians. Pokémon battles were, after all, the greatest form of entertainment in this world. With proper newspaper promotion and deliberate momentum building, it would be time to harvest satisfaction.
Chapter 180, Pokémon.
In mid-January of the 150th year of the Kingdom calendar, heavy snowfall blanketed nearly the entire Unova region, sparing only a handful of coastal cities.
A powerful cold front swept across the land.
People wrapped themselves in thick winter clothing, and even the Pokémon living alongside humans wore cashmere scarves and hooded garments. Inside the castle, the fireplace burned brightly. With the assistance of fire-type Pokémon, the room was warm and comfortable. A maid placed a steaming cup of black tea before Lucien. The tea was brewed from rare leaves cultivated in the northern mountains, rich, fragrant, and soothing. "Your Majesty," Elif said, handing him a thick stack of letters, worry evident on her face, "these are reports recently sent from all across the kingdom." Lucien took one letter, broke the seal, and began to read. It was from Twin Dragon City, signed by Lord Sharon. "My king. Since the beginning of winter, temperatures have dropped sharply. This winter appears colder than any in recent memory. In just the past 2 days, several civilians in my territory have frozen to death."
Frozen to death? Lucien's brows knit together.
He opened the remaining letters, and his expression darkened further.
Similar reports appeared again and again.
As a ruler, the idea of his subjects dying from hunger and cold was something Lucien could not accept. Elif, noticing his expression, spoke gently in an attempt to comfort him.
"Your Majesty, please don't blame yourself. Every winter, many civilians and slaves in the kingdom of Indo perish from the cold.
You've only just ascended the throne, and you've already done more than any king before you."
Lucien did not respond immediately.
Instead, he focused on one repeated detail across the letters.
"This winter is unusually cold." "Elif," Lucien asked, "is this winter colder than previous years?" Elif thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes.
It does feel noticeably harsher."
At that moment, Kiram's voice echoed within Lucien's mind.
"The war disrupted the ley lines of this land," Kiram said calmly. "That imbalance has affected the climate, temperature, and the Earth's natural pulse throughout Unova." Lucien's thoughts immediately returned to the events of the war, the destruction of the dragon veins by his brothers.
If not for his father's intervention, using Victini's power to stabilize the dragon veins, the consequences could have been catastrophic. So the war really did damage the ley lines. Lucien murmured. He then asked, "Kiram, is there a way to repair them?" "There are two paths," Kiram replied.
allow nature to recover on its own, or borrow the power of Victini.
However, the restoration of ley lines cannot be completed overnight. Preparation is essential. Lucien immediately thought of his father.
I understand, he said quietly. Turning to Elif, he ordered. Elif, please invite Father and Victini here.
Yes, Your Majesty. Elif hurried out of the room.
Lucien walked onto the terrace, gazing down at the city below, lost in thought.
The effects of the war were not limited to climate alone. After the conflict ended, peace returned to the kingdom. Lucien's coronation and the end of hostilities had caused public morale and satisfaction to surge dramatically.
But excitement fades.
Life always returns to routine.
As time passed, the deeper problems left behind by the war began to surface. On the territory panel, public morale and satisfaction, once soaring, had begun to decline steadily. The reason was clear. A rapidly expanding population brought countless challenges. Taking Lucien's city as an example. Resource shortages, environmental strain, employment difficulties, housing shortages, overburdened public services, slowed economic circulation. At present, many ordinary civilians in the city were unable to find stable employment, leaving them without reliable income. This situation could not continue.
Governing a nation was never easy. Lucien took a deep breath and turned his attention back to the technology panel. One option stood out clearly before him. Factory unlocks factory theory. Centralizes handicraft labor, such as textiles and tools, to enable large-scale, organized production.
Cost, 20,000 satisfaction.
With a single thought, 20,000 satisfaction points vanished from the panel. In their place, an overwhelming surge of knowledge flooded into Lucien's mind. Factory unlocked.
Unlocks manufacturing principles of the spinning jenny water-powered spinning machines. Mechanized production techniques for handicrafts such as leather shoes, carpets, cashmere coats, and porcelain. Note, some advanced processes require the prerequisite technology, steam engine.
Lucien immediately sat down at his desk. Carefully and methodically, he sketched the structures, mechanisms, and operational principles of each machine, recording every detail with precision.
These documents would soon be delivered to the royal workshop, where master artisans would begin turning theory into reality.
This problem had to be solved.
Fortunately, the royal treasury still held a substantial reserve of gold coins. Lucien planned to use those funds to establish factories, stimulate trade, and, most importantly, create employment. These factories would produce high-value goods such as leather footwear, carpets, cashmere coats, and fine porcelain, which merchants could then sell across the kingdom and beyond. As his pen moved across the parchment, Lucien's thoughts drifted elsewhere. He recalled the fate of workers during the Industrial Revolution of another world.
Driven by profit, factory owners had often created brutal, unsafe conditions, forcing workers into endless labor, draining their health and dignity.
There was truth in the saying that the Industrial Revolution had turned humans into little more than extensions of machines. Factories would inevitably give rise to a new merchant class.
This was unavoidable.
As a king, Lucien wished to keep as much power as possible in his own hands, but he understood that this, too, was unrealistic. What he could do was set boundaries. He would use law to restrain future factory owners.
Any violations of worker rights would be punished severely by the kingdom's judiciary.
Then there was the matter of working hours. After a moment's contemplation, Lucien made his decision. An 8-hour workday, with 2 rest days per week. Yes, this would slow the transition from the agricultural age to the industrial age. But Lucien refused to let his people suffer the same fate as the exploited masses of history.
He picked up his pen again. One bill after another took shape.
One regulation after another was drafted.
Only when everything was complete did Lucien finally lean back and let out a long breath.
At this pace,
he might not even live to see the full realization of the future he envisioned.
A figure surfaced in his mind. Xerneas, the god of life from the Kalos region. Legend said that when Xerneas radiated seven-colored light, it bestowed eternal life.
Lucian shook his head lightly. That was a problem for another day. Right now, there were more immediate concerns.
At that moment, Elif returned to the castle, accompanied by the old king and Victini. "What's wrong, Lucian?" the old king asked, clearly surprised.
"Have you encountered difficulties in governing the kingdom?"
"A few," Lucian replied honestly.
"But they can be resolved."
He explained the damage to the dragon veins, the abnormal cold, and the civilians who had frozen to death across the land. The old king fell silent. "So, the war really did affect the dragon veins," he murmured. After a moment, his expression firmed. "Then this responsibility lies with us. As their father, I must answer for my two sons' actions." "Lucian," he said calmly, "escort Victini and me back to Eindhoven. We will remain there and oversee the stabilization and restoration of the dragon veins until they recover."
"Nini."
Victini hesitated, clearly reluctant to part, but it understood the gravity of the task. After bidding Lucian farewell, the old king and Victini departed aboard Dragonite, returning to Eindhoven.
Lucian watched them disappear into the sky. Then he turned and handed the newly written legislation and technical drafts to Elif. "I'll leave this to you," he said. Elif stared at the documents, stunned. "Your Highness, what is all this?" "There are too many unemployed civilians in the territory," Lucian replied calmly.
"They need work and stable income." "I've been thinking," he continued. "Carpet weaving and cashmere production are currently scattered among individual households.
Why not centralize them?
We'll purchase raw materials directly from ranchers and have workers produce goods together. Assembly line production will make management easier and allow resources to be allocated more efficiently, dramatically increasing productivity."
Elif's eyes widened. "That's brilliant! How had he not thought of this before?"
"This would provide jobs for the commoners while increasing textile output, a true win-win. However, it will still take time before the factories are fully established and the textile machines are operational," Lucian said, falling into thought.
Winter had already arrived. Right now, the most urgent task was ensuring that everyone in the territory could survive the winter safely. Fortunately, this crisis was not entirely unexpected. Lucian and Elif had long anticipated population growth and made preparations early on.
When Lucian City was first founded, enough housing had been constructed to accommodate more than 30,000 people. After a year of continuous expansion by the Mocamp construction teams and human workers alike, the city could now house over 70,000 residents. "I remember that among the magical beast soldiers, there were quite a few fire-type Pokémon," Lucian said. "That's correct," Elif replied. "I've seen several that can continuously generate heat." "Hire them," Lucian said decisively. "Have them maintain public fires, heat stations, and warming zones. Let them help both civilians and soldiers get through this winter." "Yes, Your Majesty." Elif turned to carry out the order, but Lucian suddenly spoke again. "Wait." Elif stopped and turned back. "What is it, Your Majesty?" Lucian's gaze shifted to the technology panel. Within the agricultural age technologies, shipbuilding had already existed, but the industrial age had expanded it further. Steamships unlocks the manufacturing technology of steam-powered vessels. Requirement: 50,000 satisfaction prerequisite, steam engine. Lucian tapped his fingers lightly against the desk. "Isn't there a well-known fleet stationed in Castelia territory?" he asked. "Yes," Elif replied, puzzled. "Does Your Majesty intend to?" "I once read about a magical beast called Miltank," Lucian said slowly. "Each one can produce up to 20 liters of highly nutritious milk per day. The nutritional value is extremely high and beneficial to human health. If we had such a magical beast, our people would grow stronger, especially children and the elderly." He paused. "Unfortunately, Miltank does not inhabit Eindhoven. According to the records, they live far across the ocean, on a distant continent known as Johto." Lucian had considered this before, but back then, he lacked both authority and resources. Now, as king, his first instinct was clear.
Elif's eyes lit up in understanding. Your Majesty intends to dispatch the Castelia fleet to search for Miltank and bring them back to the kingdom? Lucian nodded.
But he was also realistic. In this era, such a voyage cannot be rushed, he said calmly.
The sea is dangerous.
We must prepare thoroughly. For example, he continued, every crew member should partner with a water-type or flying-type beast, one capable of swimming long distances or carrying people. That way, even if a shipwreck occurs, casualties can be minimized. Ultimately, this plan served another, deeper purpose. Lucian wanted to change how people viewed Pokémon.
To make them understand, trainers and Pokémon were not enemies. They were companions. Partners. Beings meant to live together. Lucian paused. And that's another issue. The word monster carried fear and hostility. It wasn't suitable anymore.
If we're going to change perceptions, he said thoughtfully, we should start by changing the name.
Pocket monsters, Pokémon. Lucian smiled faintly.
In the end, I'll go with the one I'm most familiar with.
Pokémon, short for pocket monsters.
Creatures that could be carried within specially crafted devices, companions that fought and lived alongside humans. As the term spread, it quickly replaced the old, fear-laden words people once used. More importantly, with the advancement of civilization, the industrial age brought with it an entirely new technological breakthrough.
Lucian's gaze settled on a newly unlocked entry in the system panel. Ball capsule manufacturing unlocks the manufacturing technique of early Pokeballs.
Allows the use of spherical casings and special materials to create old-style Pokeballs.
Cost, 50,000 satisfaction. 50,000 satisfaction points was no small price. But Lucian understood its value immediately.
With officially standardized Pokeballs, Pokémon could finally be managed, partnered with, and trained on a large scale. This would allow him to formally promote Pokémon and trainer culture throughout the kingdom. Once the number of trainers reached a sufficient scale, he could begin preparations for the first Pokémon Grand League. Through competition, humans would come to understand Pokémon not as monsters to be feared, but as partners whose strength could be trusted. At the same time, such a league would showcase power publicly, deterring any ambitious lords who might harbor dangerous thoughts. To become the strongest trainer would be both an honor and a challenge. Those who distinguished themselves would not only gain fame but also official positions within the kingdom. Much like the league chiefs of other regions, Lucian could fully mobilize trainers across Unova, using their strength to protect cities, develop infrastructure. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated to a Medieval Pokémon World.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.